Hello. Hi,
Hi.
Nan. Good. Here we are. Everybody, this is Nan Seymour, and she's in Salt Lake City. She's a good friend of mine and also, a really cherished human being and writer who I want to introduce you to today. We actually used a poem of yours yesterday in the Wild Family, and we all wrote to it. What was the poem? Which one was it, Nan? It
I
was
think it was Let Them Say. Was
Let
it
Them
Let Them
Say,
Say?
which was like almost like a poetic love letter to your writing students.
Yeah,
It was really
yeah.
beautiful. So I wanted to bring you in because I was saying, just
Mm.
as I was just saying to Nan when we were talking before I hit record, was that, let me check the time, make sure, okay, was that what I'm really interested in is when I talk to someone like Nan, I'm very interested in, how do ordinary people walk the world as writers? How do we, it's like the sacred and the mundane that our teacher, Dina Metzger, talks about. And so I have a bunch of questions for you, but ultimately, as listeners or whoever's watching this, I want you to know that I chose Nan to talk to because I think your work is so beautiful.
Mm.
And because I know you as an ordinary person who also makes magic. And I'm really looking for that access point for all of us to make magic, which can be the smallest of things. It's not big. So
I love that.
yeah, good. Okay. Let me give you a teeny bit more of an introduction. Nan's in Salt Lake City. Her people, we like to call them our people. Her people were, the pioneers who kind of migrated to Salt Lake City and started Mormonism. Is that how you say it?
That's correct. I mean, they brought Mormonism to Utah anyway, and also colonized this place. And yeah, we're the colonial founders of Utah and Salt Lake City in particular.
Exactly. And you allowed me to say that Brigham Young was that your people, your original founder was like a sidekick of Brigham Young. And I love that you use sidekick.
Yeah, they were pretty.
And then I also want to say something that's very, well, I want to say that you were in the Mormon church until you were 30. You went on a mission. You like swallowed, you took the medicine and this was your life. Yeah. And I'm going to bring that back to what you're doing now and writing and that you left the Mormon church over 20 years ago. Right. That it's a process of leaving, which is a whole other interview. But I also want to say that our people, Nan tells me a lot, our people and my people were like the Jews who came to Salt Lake City from Bavaria and started brewing beer. And that my like great uncle Emo, who Nan actually made the connection for me with, is buried in the graveyard with Nan's people.
Right. Or just, just next door. And it was so funny, wasn't it, when we first discovered this, because you didn't know what I know is that that's the most famous grave. It's like the grave that the kids go to dance around and evoke somebody. So when you first told me about your people, I absolutely not only knew who they were, but I knew where specifically the grave.
Yes, and that's a whole other interview too. Yeah. Great Uncle Emo. But here we are today in 2021 talking about something we care about that's beautiful, and our people may have known each other back then. So I just
they definitely did. I mean, it was a small town then, and they definitely did. That's so interesting.
We brewed beer. Yeah. You were into the Mormonism.
Well, your people brewed the beer and my people secretly drank it. That's probably actually how it rolled, right?
Right. And I understand the fondness immediately. So, okay.
Thanks for the beer, Laurie.
So there's a kind of karma here that I just want to bring into the space.
Yeah, okay, definitely.
So, all right, let's move into the interview. I thought, let's see. I just want to name a couple other things I want to talk about too before I forget. Maybe you'll help me remember if I forget. I think the church is interesting, and we'll talk a little bit about, because I think there's a connection in your work. Your work is deeply spiritual and reverent, full of reverence. And so I'm just curious where there's a connection there. Also, while you were still in the church, you ran a bakery, with your then husband. And you
Yeah.
have this beautiful quote saying that you learned a lot about process through baking. And I'd love to return to that if we can. I think that's great. I think we should start with you reading a few poems. Do you have the book in front of you? Can you hold it up?
Here's the book.
Prayers Not Meant for Heaven. This is your first book.
It is. And
they're prayers. They're prayers, and not, we could call them poems, but they're prayers.
Yeah, they are. They are, and you know, many poems are prayers, and many prayers are poems. So I think there's kind of an intentional blurring of the lines here. But they're prayers. They're prayers to me. To me, the way I define prayer is I've consecrated my attention. So I've, you know, consecrated attention means I've dedicated it to the holy. And, you know, depending on who you are, you might find the divine or the holy in a lot of places. And this book finds the divine in a lot of places. So here's a prayer. Actually, it's a blessing. It's a pair of blessings. And I wanted to maybe just frame them by saying, those, I know that we're talking to writers and people with pens in their hands. So there's invitations, writing invitations connected to these. So you could listen, if you're listening, you can listen with that ear, like what would it mean to write in this direction? So this blessing in retrospect is about an experience that I had during the pandemic, not too long ago, just near here. Blessing in retrospect. Driving by my old house on 3rd Ave between O and P, I see the past occupants, a newly divorced mom eagerly finishing her 3rd try at college, and her only kid, a 6-foot-tall teen with dirty blonde curls. The kid appears to be a boy, but she isn't. The mom appears to be courageous, but she isn't. They live alone on the 1st floor with their deranged rescue doglet who only bites the nicest people. When I witness the 3 of them, their leaking roof and too thin windows, I know they're headed into their longest winter toward their most dangerous spring. I love them and forgive them everything. So that's blessing in retrospect. It's really a report of something that actually happened, but as it was happening, I knew I would write about it. And I knew that I wanted to invite the experience of going back, that like I realized this actual love, surge of love that I feel for the people in this house a decade ago. I just felt like it took, like this is too powerful to not mean something to them. And so I understood that there was a power in going back to bless a former self. And I think to write into that is so powerful.
So those people were you?
Yeah,
that was
me and my daughter and our little deranged dog. You know, I just saw them. I was driving by that house. It's not far from here. And I saw them and I loved them in a way that was very attentive and potent. And I knew it was potent. And I thought that time kind of effaced in the power of that. Like time then didn't mean anything relative to this loving attention. And so that I knew I was helping myself from the future, you know?
Right.
You know,
I hate to seem so base, but I love that you explained it to me. I didn't know that's what the connection was. Does that mean that you were driving by the old place and you just had a vision of your past and who you were?
Totally.
You and B and the dog.
Yeah, I mean, it was physically the house, right? But I'm looking to the house, I saw us, you know, and so I saw us so clearly, and I had this, you know, the feeling that the poem reports, I loved them and I forgave them everything. It was like such a generous love that I didn't have for myself then.
Of course.
Right, but I could bring it now. Right?
And it still has so much power to bless, to pray, to bless and pray the historical, the former,
right, into
the now, and not lost at all.
Right.
Beautiful.
Well, exactly. And I think, I'm no scientist, so I can't explain this, but I believe it, that time, is a construct, really, right? So, if there wasn't any time, then I'm in actual loving connection with that person who is also me and isn't me anymore, right? But it's
That's
like
beautiful.
that kind of love couldn't be, I just felt that it couldn't be lost on that person, even if that person no longer is in the way we think about it. But it's like, wow, she really actually she needed that kind of love. And in some way, I'm bringing it to her. If you just kind of take time out of the equation.
I adore that. And I love that time continuum, like that, if we were working in sci-fi right now, like that is going on right now.
Right.
You're shutting her door and she's locking it, and you and B are walking out with that bedraggled little pup.
Right.
And no courage. And the winter's bad, but the spring will be worse.
Right.
That's amazing. And just as a writer and thinking about anybody watching this, that would be an amazing prompt too,
Right.
to write back to a moment, to scene, and to bless.
Totally. So that's the invitation, I think, is like, maybe those that are listening, you might even choose a time that was one of the worst times, the hardest times, and start with the prompt, I see her, I see them.
I love it.
And then just, bring them into view and then offer them a blessing. It could be very specific. Maybe they really need a very specific thing, but, whatever love wouldn't be wasted is my thought.
I love it. Thank you so much for reading that. And you're going to read us one more, and then we're going to keep talking.
Yeah, this pairs with that one. So, and it was inspired by the same experience. So that happened. And I thought, oh, what if there's a me a decade ahead of now, a decade ahead of this pandemic and all this trouble, who's looking back with the same ability. And I also thought she would be even better at it, because I'm just learning this trick, this kind of way of casting a spell now. But if she's been working on that, she'd be really good at it. And it was a cheering, like in the middle of the pandemic, I thought, okay, I'm going to try to write into that. So that's what this one is called, Blessing from the Future. And the invitation for writers could be the same, like transport yourself 10 years ahead and then come back for the blessing, right? So you could write into that, right? You could imagine writing from you 10 years ahead. This is pointing in that direction. Blessing from the future. There's a wiser one, a decade ahead, reaching back not only to bless, but to show me how. More practice she's pulling for me through earthquake and aftershock, curfew and quarantine, past the inland hurricane, through the rising violence of white supremacy, through this plague in its entirety. She's pulling me towards purpose. She loves justice intimately. She's been doing all she can to hasten it.
It's powerful. That's powerful. It's like you're threading your way. You're threading your way through your life. I loved that you said consecrating. Did you say consecrating
your attention?
Attention.
Yeah.
Could you say more about that? That's really beautiful.
Yeah. So consecrating, dedicating to the sacred. Your attention, just implies a certain quality of attention, which I think that is prayer, really completely being present and attending to a relationship, a conversation is prayerful to me. To be all the way in the face of a flower and noticing the way it's different from every other flower, to like be completely there. That's a prayer. Those are wordless prayers, right? But then we bring them to the page, and it's almost like we're consecrating them again. Those of us that are writing can dedicate it once again, and then send it out, right? Like you can dedicate it and send it forth, and then it travels, and you don't even know how it travels, which is so beautiful. And the prayers are traveling around the world. They don't need to go to heaven and come back. They go out, right? They go out like vines, like this incredible vine right here in my backyard that planted itself, some kind of rogue squash. It's actually grown like, I think more than 20 feet up into a tree, and also 20 feet across the yard. And it's like moving and alive in a way you could never predict. And I feel like when we consecrate our attention, that's the natural way it's going to move, actually.
I get this image of like a handful, like words and prayers and stories, like seeds that we just throw out into the field, but that the energy of the consecrating, of the attention, and then the coming back and the making, the scribing, the writing it down, and then letting it out again feels like a medicine.
It is a medicine. That's a great word to use for it. It's the medicine we need, I think. And part of it is because it's a medicine that connects us, right?
Right.
It's not an individual pursuit anymore. Once you've consecrated it and also like sent it forth, it's no longer about I, it's we now. And everything that could save us will also connect us. That's going to happen collectively. So that threading, I love the word threading you just used, the threading, the vining, the bringing together, any energy that's doing that, I think is in our favor.
And again, I just kind of want to go back to that attention that you're talking about. Are you aware of that attention all the time? When you drop by the bakery, when you go to pick up, Mustafa, when you I'm curious about that. I'm interested in the sacred and the mundane,
right.
That so much of our lives are mundane. And we also have very self-oriented thoughts like, how's my hair? And I guess I'll wear this dress today, or the sort of the stuff that doesn't even seem to rise to the level of anything that matters. And yet you're writing, so how do you bridge that? I'm really curious. This might be the most helpful thing for people.
Yeah, I love this conversation. So the premise, first of all, the consecrating attention, what you're asking about, I grew that by through my writerly attention. I grew that by writing. I would say the primary way I grew that was from writing, or that I'm growing it, right? It's not, and am I always in that prayerful mind and that reverence? Reverence is another word you use to describe it. No, I'm an ordinary person stubbing my toe, and
right.
You know what I mean? Of course I'm not, but am I increasingly, am I trying to grow it, and is it growing? Yes. So am I increasing the amount of my attention that is spent that way? I think so. Am I devoted to it? Absolutely.
I think what I know about you is you're a very sensitive person.
Yeah.
I've seen you break into tears
often.
Yeah. I've seen you break into tears teaching. I forgot to mention Nan is an excellent writing teacher.
Thank you.
And we've been writing together for about 7 years. So I've seen this.
I learned from some of the best.
And so I think what I've seen that you've gotten stung a lot. And I feel like that word stung is really important because a lot of, there are people out there who just have thicker skins and as a sort of survival technique. But you have, you are touched deeply and often and quickly.
True.
And so I'm just making that connection for anyone out there watching this. Thinking, how can I too be moved when I'm in the world? How can I notice when some things are rising?
Right.
And so it's even just pray that you will be stung. We need the medicine of the bee. We need the medicine of the sting in order to wake us up, and
totally. We need to feel, and we need to stay permeable. So that there's a choice around that. There's a choice to keep not a thin skin, essentially, but at the same time cultivate a steady center. I think so. I'm not advocating that people get blown off their feet all the time. So I think growing a steady center, which is presence, which is also prayerful and writerly. So you grow that steady center, but then you keep your arms out. You are able to receive both the pain and the beauty, and you're willing to take it in. You're willing, permission to cry granted. I just had to write myself the biggest permission slip ever to be able to show up and know that anytime I tear up, I've learned over time to think of that as, well, good, this gives permission to other people, instead of any kind of self-shaming. I'm not strong enough. I'm plenty strong.
It's like, yeah, you're plenty strong. You're strong enough to cry.
Yeah, right. To show up and be authentic in the way that you are so great at holding that space for people, Lori. And I do want to say, since you mentioned teaching, I know you weren't looking for this, but really, I did learn from the best, and you're one of them. And you were so generous with me all the way along in mentoring.
Yeah. Well,
so a lot of the things I know about showing up and holding space for that, I learned from you. It's all prayerful, right? But I think
all prayerful.
To go back to your question, growing that attention, consecrating attention is very writerly. And so I think the first trick was, I thought, I started thinking ahead, noticing, like, it's a noticing, right? And you're like, I might write about this. And just the idea, I might write about this. Then you turn on like this. Sometimes I think of it as like, not just the writing by hand, but it's like, I'm in an experience and I'm tracing it. I'm like with a magic pen made of light, and I'm tracing it so I can bring it back, right? So I'm like tracing it in my attention, and then when I sit down to write, I can bring it back. And I've memorized details and smells and dialogue and sounds because I want to have it twice, right?
That's really beautiful. I love that, the sort of the pen. Do you ever walk around and tape yourself on your phone as you're experiencing something, or is
sometimes I do, but I don't know. I'm just to go back to ordinary. Like I have ADHD. I'm a really untidy person. My methods are untidy. I think maybe that's invited me to really focus my attention. This one thing I can kind of hold within myself, where I don't need devices or methods, or, I change my methods all the time. So I'm just trying to grow this kind of quiet thing that nobody can see. And that doesn't need to be plugged in. So like I kind of cherish the freedom that signifies for me. I'm like, you couldn't take this away, put me in, a dark cell, and I'd still have it.
Right. Right.
Of
course. Yeah. Beautiful. Is writing hard for you? Like, do you sit down and not like it?
like any writer.
Everyone.
I love writing in community, and I do most of my generative writing, as you know, happens in community, which is, I feel like anybody, and I'm sure all the people on this call, because they're working with you, it's so lucky to write in community and not do that work alone. I don't love doing it alone. I don't mind revising alone because of the nerdy. There's kind of a nerdy part, like tinkering with poetry, so there's a part that has to be done alone, right? But even that, like, I'll revise and I'll send it to someone like you, or I'll read it to you. Like, I revise with friends too. I generate in community almost always. Hardly am generating anything not in community, but I have a lucky life that's built around that, right? So generating in community, I go away and tinker, and I bring it back to friends I trust. Right. Friends whose writing I like. So it's very much more a communal activity for me than a solitary one. And I love it. I love all of I love it, actually.
Yeah, I love that you said writing in community. There's a kind of call. Like you were saying before, you're about to go do a workshop and you're going to do some singing in the workshop.
Yeah.
And it's sort of an energetic call
when
we're writing in community. Because it's almost like taking something straight from the oven and then feeding it to people.
It totally is that. I love that you brought it back to baking, because it is like, it's like you make the bread, you get up early and you grind the wheat, and you might be doing that alone, but it's nothing until you break it with someone else. Like that's the quintessential moment for a baker, right? It's like you ground the wheat, you mix the dough, you waited, you kneaded, you put it in the oven and brought it out, and it's all this long process. And then it is something when it's shared. That's when it's something. It's like you share it. In the best case scenario, it's still warm. And you maybe even just like ripped it open, and here's this warm loaf, and I give you a piece and I have a piece, and now it's really something.
And that makes me think back to, again, like that consecrated attention, the coming back, the drawing it up, and then the sending it out again. And it's that beautiful beautiful generosity of, I am touched, this matters, I'm going to make it into something I can give to you, and now it's gone.
Yeah.
And it takes away from a lot of times where I can get stuck and other people can get stuck with, but it's not good. Or this bread tastes a little funny, or, you know, like we're bypassing that. And we're saying like, the right person will get this. The right person will hear this. And you know, and we know that like when we're writing, sometimes I say, be generous. Don't worry about whether you like it. Someone else might hear this today, right, and you can change everything for them. And if you get in the way with your perfectionism or your judgment, you're going to mess up the offering. So this is
totally, or you might not even make one. You might never make an offer. We might not, right? We've all been in that place where like, oh, we have nothing to offer. That's bullshit, frankly. Like, we could make 1,000 loaves of bread and we could just keep making them and breaking them, and one will be amazing and one might be a little less so.
And it's a different energy. It's like one way is about us and our greatness, and the other is about the generosity and the offering.
Totally.
What people need. There are people out there who need bread.
Yes.
It's okay if it
that
ain't
will always
perfect.
be true. Yeah.
There's always going to be people who need bread. And
yeah, that's always true.
I'm really interested in this particular thing we're talking about as a writer, as someone who's working on something now with a lot of like worry around, you know, like, is this right? Is this right? It's like, I just want to get out of the way. I want to get out of that pool, and I want to get into this lane, which is thank you, thank you, thank you. This is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm thinking. This, and just get out of the way and just ride the river of gratitude and blessing, yeah, trusting that there's something here. Not to say that we don't edit and tinker later, we do, but we don't want to muck up the flow as it's coming through us.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the way you talk about it. And I've been so inspired by watching you do that. Ride the river. How did you say it just now? Ride the river of gratitude and blessing and truth. Mm-hmm. Right? Like we're riding those rivers and we're not stopping. And, you know, there's always room to revise and refine, but even that you could get lost. You could be polishing forever and never offering anything. So I know that I'm erring on the side of generosity, and that's a choice. Mm-hmm. And I'm veering away from anything that could be called preciousness. Mm-hmm. So I'm choosing, as you use the word generous, I think that's a great description of let's err on the side of generosity.
I love that. You said something, I read something on your website. I'm going to see if I can find it. Did I write it down? Oh, you said authentic expression matters in every realm. And you said from our sacred rituals to our daily business, from weddings to websites, authentic expression matters in every realm.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. Right. Amen. Yeah. I'll stand by that statement. I wrote it some time ago, but I was like, that's really a core understanding for me. And you know what's counter to that is the performance culture and the culture of comparison. So I like to name that so that I'm intentionally making a break away. So I've got to like step away from any enculturation to perform, and also comparison will just take the joy out of everything, right?
How do you like take that hat off and put the hat of authentic? How do you create a space for yourself to get away from that cultural noise of this better be good?
Yeah. I'm growing, it's practice, right? So it's not a hat. It's like, I'm practicing all the time by writing with other people in the way that you do, by making and keeping agreements to self-kindness. And the way that first poem I read reflects, like, I'm just going to choose to love this person, this middle-aged overweight lady from Utah. You know what I mean? Like, I'm actually going to daily choose to love her and forgive her. Because she's trying, like I think it's a camera work, right? So it's like, I would maybe love her even if she wasn't trying, but she sure as hell is. And if I can pull the camera up to even the corner of this room and look down, I can just, I'm good at being kind. I love people. I love you. Why not love myself the same amount with the same generosity, right?
Now you're talking about more than writing.
Yes.
You're talking about protecting the writer, like the
Yeah.
most sacred way.
Yeah,
So
why
the
not
writer can,
love the bejesus out of her, like why not? Like
right,
why not? And you know what? That protecting is a great word. Then she has room to show up.
as she is, without having to import something better or
Right.
fancier,
Or wait.
you
We don't
know.
have time to wait, actually.
No, we don't have time to wait.
You and I, we talked about that, but I think I internally have a sense of urgency.
Mhm,
Sometimes it gets in my way. It's not always useful. I have to think
mhm,
about it,
mhm.
but sometimes it is useful, and the urgency keeps me writing.
I think the urgency in your work and all the pieces in this book, which I hope that I'll make it a little note where people can find the work. It's
Oh,
through
thank
Maya
you.
Stein's new publishing house called Toad Hall Editions, and
And
so
just like a little raise the hands for Toad Hall editions. Aren't they
Toad Hall
amazing?
Editions,
Yeah.
Maya and Amy,
Yeah.
um, and Liz's new press. So
Amazing
yeah,
people.
it's really beautiful. And I think there's a huge urgency in your work. You're not just creating beauty for beauty's sake at all. Your work, each piece has a kind of medicine in it that
Right.
is meant to go out, that is meant to do work and work now.
Yeah. This is maybe a good place just to mention briefly Dina Metzger, because
Yeah.
her influence is so great. And you and I share that influence, and you invited me into that influence, which I'm so grateful. But
We're talking about Dina Metzger, who has been a mentor to both of us and me for many, many years. And we've studied
incredible,
with Dina.
incredible mentor, and her invitation to be a part of ushering in the consciousness
Mhm,
that could save
mhm,
humans on this earth, that could change things. And you're right. So you're right. That's the purpose of. There
mhm.
is purpose to all the writing in it. There's a hope, right? It holds a prayer within it. I pray this will change our
I
collective
want to say
consciousness, including my own, right? Like,
your own. And I want to
yeah.
say one thing, and I know we're gonna stop talking soon, and I'm gonna have you read a really beautiful poem at the end. But
Thanks.
this thing you just said about feeling the urgency, I haven't always felt that urgency
Mhm.
when, as a writer, I've often been caught up in my own kind of, Channel 7 story about I tend to write about family. I tend to write about relationships. So that's sort of where my attention gets consecrated.
Right, right.
Um, I guess, and I also want, I also want to pay attention to the urgency and to
Mhm.
actually bring my attention to the urgency. And maybe that's just enough. And I'm thinking of other people who are watching this, who are
Right.
feeling like, I also want, I also want to help save the world with seeds,
Yeah.
with beauty and seeds. And I guess I'm not sure if I have a question, or maybe I'm just talking to myself, and I'm happy to hear what you want to say about it. But I'm
Mhm.
saying maybe the intention to pay attention
Right.
is what's needed,
I would just say that what comes up for me with that is, it's what are we paying attention to in a very
right?
pointed way to hold it is, we could attend to the ways we're linked
Uh-huh.
instead of the ways we're ranked.
Wow, that's so beautiful.
I am quasi quoting Gloria Steinem, something I heard Gloria Steinem say in a very close way to that. And I don't know, I'm not the originator of that idea by any means, but it stuck with me. I heard her say that and I was like, that. So it was about 6 years ago. She was in
Say it
Salt Lake.
again. Say it again.
That we need to attend to the ways we are linked and not the ways we are ranked. And it's like that, if we did that, and so we could bring that to our work. We could bring the curiosity about how we're linked and the exploration about how we're linked. And, the attention that we've been spending on the ways we're ranked, that hasn't helped us. It's not helping us as individuals or the planet. So it's like, okay, what if we just
I know.
change,
Right.
like
I mean,
change the focus, right?
even going out into your own garden, what is the link to you in the garden?
Exactly. And I so appreciate that you brought that, because as you know, from her studies with Dina, it's not the we includes not just humans. The
Right.
we must include the earth, the we must include
Mhm.
all life. And then I guess this might be a closing thought, because the other thing I think about a lot is aligning myself and my work with the life that loves life. Like, where is the life that loves life? It's evident like everywhere in the natural world. And what if my work is, showing up in favor? I need to show up in favor, both with the pen and as a person and in relationship. That's my main idea, I think.
Do you have room at your table for me? I'd love to be your student.
I am very excited to write with you, and there's always room at my table for you.
We have made a little writing retreat for ourselves in a couple of weeks. We're going to write.
So excited about it, actually.
All right, listen, I'm just absolutely moved by so much that you've said, and I'd like you to read one last poem.
Sure.
And then I'll put in the links where people can find you and your book and everything. And I asked Nan to read this poem, and could you set it up for us a little bit and then read it, and then we'll bless you and kiss you.
Thank you. This has been such a delight, by the way.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thanks so much for, I love the conversation with you. It's so deep. So this poem, I will tell you I won't say much because I think the poem is fairly self-explanatory, including the title, but I just want people who hear it to know that I think the title's funny. So I hope you do too. And not everything about the poem is funny, but the title is funny. And it's for my beloved. So this is called Why I Got Married a Third Time After Swearing I Never Would Again. Why I Got Married a Third Time After Swearing I Never Would Again. It's for Mustafa. Because, do you like Rumi, was his first question. Because he wore a floral scarf edged with lace on our second date. Because when I noticed it, his face became the Mediterranean lit by the moon. Because a single word in Turkish, yakamoz, means moonlight spilling over the, because the scarf was his grandmother's. Because after we watered our sapling plum and hardy fig, he said, we have given the fruit trees their soul water. Because we love bread similarly, with reverence for earth and labor. Because he taught me to love Anatolian rock. Because his license plate reads Nazim for Nazim Hikmet. Because when apropos of nothing, I looked up and said, there is a river under the river. He replied, there is, there must be. Because he is curvaceous in his ways. Because he once told me, I don't want to be a gentleman, I want to be a gentle human. Because the patrol who halted us 80 miles north of the border barked English or Spanish, and then papers. And then spitting through teeth, if I wanted to, I could keep you here. Because here was nowhere, and what he said was true because of his gun. Because my hands trembled as we drove away. Because marriage is a plea for refuge. Because we had no answer for the gun.
Blessing for your marriage.
Mm.
Oh my God. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Really such a pleasure.
Really. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I don't know what to say, just bless you and thank you for being with us and sharing so much beauty. And I look forward to going over those poems again and again.
Thank you.
Those prayers again and again, again and again. So beautiful. We didn't even get to talk about the Mormon Church another time.
I'll chat about that anytime.
Okay.
I can't wait to see you here in the graveyard. Thank you for this. Thank you.
Love you.
Love you,
Thank
friend.
you so much.
Bye.
Bye.